story for a little longer. Ari Aramesh joins us now from San Francisco. He's a national security and foreign policy analyst. Ari, thanks for staying up. The Israelis have carried out military strikes on Iranian targets inside Syria for months now. But until this point, the Iranians have been relatively restrained, but not now. And the theory is the nuclear agreement, effectively being on life support now, is the difference here, and Iran has nothing to lose. I'm not a huge fan of cause and effect arguments, especially in the Mideast, but this time it seems pretty obvious.
You know, it's also the first time that the Israelis are carrying out an attack and openly taking responsibility for it, which is sort of a break from their historical position of ambiguity. Was it us? Was it not us? Was it us or was it not us? But there has not yet been a direct engagement between Iranians and the Israelis. Those are the forces of Iran's armed forces, either the Islamic Revolutionary Guards forces that are present in Syria or Israeli Defense Forces, the IDF. It's always been through proxies, Hezbollah, Hamas, Islamic Jihad, and so on and so forth. What's also interesting is for the Syrian government to try to de-escalate the situation. It was the Syrians who came out and said, well, the rockets that hit the Golan Heights were actually launched by the Syrian military, trying to sort of deflect away some of the blame from the Revolutionary Guards that are present in Syria. But again, Iran had promised in the past to take revenge for Israel's attacks, several attacks now for the past few months in Syria. But Israel has also made it clear that will not allow Iran to have operating bases in Syria, whether there are air bases or forward infantry bases or any permanent military bases for which through which Iran can sort of launch an attack against Israel directly. And that's what Israel is trying to prevent.
Well, before there was this direct military confrontation, the U.S. National Security Advisor John Bolton was asked specifically if the president's decision to withdraw from the Iran nuclear deal would heighten the risk of war. This was his answer.
I don't think it will bring us closer. I think Iran is bringing us closer to war with its belligerent activity in Iraq and Syria. You know, they've been moving missiles. The Revolutionary Guards Quds Force has been moving missiles into Syria that can hit any target inside Israel. That's why we've seen recent Israeli strikes. It's that aggressive militaristic behavior by Iran on the ground in the region that's the real threat.
Okay, so you have Bolton saying it's all Iran's fault. We've also heard in the past few hours from Israel's defense minister publicly saying that no one wants this confrontation to escalate into an all-out war. What's stopping this from escalating further? How does this play out in the coming hours and the coming days?
Well, for one thing, President Trump pulling out of the Iran deal has emboldened the hardliners in Iran. The hardliners who did not want to negotiate with the United States or the West are now saying, look, you know, we've been proven right. The West, chief amongst them, the U.S. cannot be trusted. So on the one hand, now they have the moral upper hand now in politics in Tehran. Secondly, hardliners in both theaters perhaps are not big fans of de-escalation. A little military conflict with Israel will definitely embolden the hardliners in Iran to do the following. A, do away with any dissent in the country, declare emergency law, go ahead and shut down any means of civil disobedience or any means of political dissent. Secondly, it will also prove their case that conflict and resistance is the only way to deal with the West, the United States, and Israel. But again, looking at this from a regional perspective, Iran's regional ambitions in Iraq, in Syria, in Bahrain, in Yemen, in Lebanon, they have created and caused much dissatisfaction and much concern amongst U.S. allies. Those are Saudi Arabia, Israel, United Arab Emirates, and even a little farther west, Egypt. So Iran has been on the rise ever since the U.S. invasion of Iraq in 2003. And its rise has been coupled with much concern and much anxiety amongst U.S. allies in the region. The U.S. tried to curb some of this rise. Having said that, President Trump's actions recently, pulling out of the nuclear deal and also alienating our own allies, is not really helping the cause here.
Just very quickly, because we are almost out of time, you did mention how the Israelis actually took credit for this military action the first time, for publicly saying it was them instead of going through a proxy. We also heard from the IDF, which actually tweeted out and calling out Iran and blaming the Iranian Quds forces. Well, that in itself doesn't seem remarkable. It is unprecedented. It's the first time Israel has attributed an attack to Iran, and all of this, it seems like everything's out in the open now. seems to be setting the stage for some kind of wider confrontation.
It is. And again, look at it regionally. Just a few days ago in Lebanon, Iran's allies, Hezbollah, again, won parliamentary majority in the Lebanese parliament. The civil war in Syria seems to be all but over in the interest of Iran's ally, Bashar al-Assad. Iran happens to be, again, on the rise. And with the nuclear deal on its demise, at least from an American perspective, Iran seems to have, the U.S. seems to even have less leverage to pressure Iran regionally. Again, I really want to know what the White House is thinking at the moment, because people like McMaster or Tillerson are gone, and the regime change crowd, people like John Bolton and Pompeo, are now back in key positions. Is their goal full-blown regime change, or are we going towards a regime transformation, or are we actually going towards engagement? If the goal is, as stated in the past by John Bolton and Pompeo, that it's regime change, I don't think they're going to push the Israelis to de-escalate. And as we all know, Iranian hardliners are not interested in de-escalation. So we'll have to see what happens. But again, we can only hope for cooler heads to prevail.
Yeah, the atmosphere just doesn't feel like that right now, certainly with Bolton and Pompeo in the White House. And just one quick correction about Hezbollah and the elections in Lebanon. Hezbollah, the number of MPs was unchanged, but its allies in Parliament scored a pretty big win, giving it that majority. I've had some tweets and people call us out for that, so I just want to make sure that clarification is made, but the sentiment is correct. Ari, thanks so much. Appreciate you being with us.
Well, in less than 2 hours, U.S. President Donald Trump is to greet 3 Americans who had been imprisoned in North Korea as they arrive